Uh, those doing Zen meditation can find it hard at first to get their minds around what life must be like in emptiness. While they certainly do not expect it to be like somewhere out in space in a spacesuit with only an unending supply of food, water, and oxygen, it isn't unreasonable for them to ask what they will be when they are empty. However, what emptiness refers to is being empty of attachments to thoughts and things, so that it isn't us that disappear, but our attachments. To be unattached to things is not to be bound, is to not be bound by habitual, to be unattached to things is to not be bound by habitual ways of thinking. There goes Harvey. This doesn't mean that you won't have feelings for a mate or children or parents or pets or friends. Here's Harvey right here with me. Yeah. Nor does not being attached imply that nothing will be left to you finally. Rather, the effect of non-attachment is that everything will be okay, for it ends up being a total acceptance of everything, including oneself. To be empty of acceptance, to be empty of attachments, is to be completely open, resulting in our being or becoming more ourselves, not less. Our attachments are what keep us closed. Indeed, being more open is good for our relationships, for they won't be affected as much by our thoughts. Ordinarily, we take our thoughts seriously, and those about our likes and dislikes are likely to come between ourselves and others. Even if our thoughts are concerned with our reaction to the thoughts of others, those thoughts are still ours, coming as they do from within us. Some people even intentionally close themselves off from others to avoid the tension that thoughts about others produces. The result is that it is their own thoughts that isolate them. And our being unattached to such thoughts cannot help but improve our relationships with others. Of course, there is nothing wrong with thoughts in themselves, as it is our attachment to them that is the source of our suffering. We believe in thoughts because we identify with them and so end up treating them as if it is they that control us. Yet our meditation teaches us that the thoughts that appear in our minds come out of nowhere, as it were. Emptiness is the state of being without fear also. As the Heart Sutra says, without any hindrances, no fears exist. These hindrances are attachments. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's statement during the Great Depression about fear, that we have nothing to fear but fear ourselves, is as irrelevant to all of our lives now. Ultimately, emptiness is the same as selflessness. For emptiness is the state of being free from our small self and the thoughts related to it that we are attached to. We don't have to worry about not being ourselves in emptiness. As a consequence of stopping thinking about ourselves, we have less fears and so are more ourselves. Living beings flee when they're in danger, wanting to stay alive, but most of our fears do not have such a substantial basis. We can be afraid of what others say, or of not getting what we want, or of getting what we don't want. The list of possible things to fear due to unnecessary thinking must be infinite. That's why we say delusions are inexhaustible when we vow to get rid of them. That this suffering comes from believing in our thoughts is stressed in the Lankavatara Sutra that Bodhidharma brought with him on his 3-year journey from southern India to southern China. It had a great effect on the early Zen masters. The Lankavatara states that we in the world, as we think we know it, are projections of our mind, and as such are problems we make for ourselves by thinking. If we are in pain, thinking about it adds to our pain. Why this is so, again, is that we are attached to our thoughts. Falling for thinking that what we think is real, because it seems so obvious that as our mind is ours, so the thoughts in it must be ours also. In time, as we recognize and accept them as projections, they will cease disturbing us. No longer fooled by them, we will experience things as they actually are instead. There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, as Hamlet said. And our thoughts about good or bad can also cause us to have fears. Perhaps due to our parents having wanted to protect us from doing something wrong in our futures, our awareness of a bad, quote unquote, my quote unquote, bad thought now can cause us to experience fear. Not so much out of putting it in action, but anxious merely about having had such a thought. This reaction is as well as not based on a clear understanding of the ephemeral nature of our thoughts. As seen in meditation, as long as we don't latch onto our thoughts as they appear out of nowhere, they will disappear as easily, replacing each other one after another. Once again, they shouldn't identify us, but they do because of our tending to think that the thoughts in our mind are ours because of our belief in ourselves, although they are in fact mere mental attributes. It's not a matter of Descartes' I think, but here I change to we think, therefore we are, for we are not what we think, unless, of course, we correctly view ourselves as being as insubstantial as our thoughts. It follows that to have a bad thought and feel stressed because of it is to act on something unreal as if it were real. By such a process, we come to fear what needn't be feared. As shown above, the remedy that Shakyamuni Buddha gave us for the suffering caused by thoughts is not to be attached to them. Thoughts needn't automatically be taken seriously, especially those tired, cranky thoughts that can cause extra fears. It is attachment that makes the unreal appear real. Thinking doesn't always have to be believed in. Oh, thank you. Here comes Jane. Here comes Jane. Yeah. All right. Oh. Yep. Do you have any questions or comments? Yes, Sandy.
Thank you, Peter, for that talk. I really enjoyed it. And that was one of the first things I noticed when I started meditating was the thoughts, like you say, come out of nowhere. And they're not always related to what you're even doing or at any time. They're just a stream that seems to wind its way through your mind and out, like in one ear, out the other. I became aware of that, which I had never before. I had always been very attached to my thoughts and thought they were completely real, and that any fear I had, I should be really worried about. But now I can take a bit of a step back when I have fears come up, and I can really look at them and say, is this something valid? Is this something real? Um, and usually it's not. It's just my own, it's just the thought. It's not anything based in reality. And it's surprising of how much of our lives is spent processing this constant stream of thinking and thoughts. And it's nice to be able to meditate and to get a little bit of quiet, which occasionally comes. But it really was a mind opener when I realized what that was and how unrelated they were to reality. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, that's very important to understand that. We don't need a book to tell us.
That's right. It
Or,
truly is
or a
garbage
teacher.
in, garbage out.
Or a teacher's friend.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, Mike?
My problem is I seem to do more thinking when I'm meditating than when I'm not. It's like the brain goes, oh, empty space, I'll fill it up. Here, think about this, dwell on this, and it's that's where I have my problems. I sit here and go, I meditate every day, and it's like, I'm thinking more now than when I'm sitting around the house or doing something and stuff like that. And it's a hard task, though, to just tell yourself this is what your brain does. Just let them go by. Don't get attached to them. Don't attach opinions or concepts, anything to them. Just let them flow by. It's like watching leaves flow by on a river. You just let them go by and just look at them and say, okay, fine. But I don't know why. As soon as I have a quiet moment, my brain just says, okay, I'm here. Let's party.
Well, your brain is a henchman of your thoughts. In a word no one uses anymore. Henchman. That's true. Anyway, yes, Mike. That sometimes is true, but the important thing is not exactly to try to quiet your mind, or to be even unhappy about the fact that, well, you didn't say this, by the way, but if someone were unhappy about the fact that their mind was always full during meditation, because the point is to be with your mind without being attached to it.
That's what I try to do. I just let it go by. I observe, I'm aware of them, but it's like, just move on, and just, don't sit there. Because sometimes I'll realize I'm daydreaming, and I don't even realize I started a daydream while I'm meditating. All of a sudden, I'm like 3 minutes later, I'm like, how did I get over here? Quiet my mind down and get back to it.
That's right. All those things happen. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at my clock here for you. Mark. Yeah, Mark. Okay, I see it now.
I would like to get clarification, I guess. When we say we must deal with greed, hate, and delusion, where's fear of that?
Greed, hate, and delusion are all based on fear. Because, of course, if you get what you want, you don't feel any fear. But if you don't get what you want, then you feel fear of not getting it. If you're not getting it, it also makes you angry. So it often goes back to that one being the most dominant. But whether it's obsession or hatred, it's all the same. It's just it's a fear, but it's a fear that that tries to control us. That's not accurate. It doesn't try to control us. But anyway, we assume that it should control us.
How does delusion fit into that?
Delusion is there's two words for there's two meanings for delusion. Okay, so one meaning of delusion is anger, fear, and delusion, and then there are various ways of saying what is delusion, because actually what they do is they break it down into more. But although not all the lists are the same. So one, for example, is pride or arrogance, those kind of things. Thinking, oh, I did a good job. Paying, not thinking that the work is what matters, but you, the person that did the work, matters. That's pride. Okay. But another one also is, laziness or sloth. Now, just no, I got enough. I don't need any more. Nah, let's play, man. Okay? So actually any of those things that can distract you, it kind of one way, which I mentioned before, is that delusion is actually, well, first off, delusion is elementarily, right? Something you want, that's not delusion. That's your desire. Something you don't want, that's the anger or hatred. And the third one is I don't care. Who cares? And who cares ultimately can be a very, very powerful one. So all those things go together. But the first two, wanting and not wanting, liking and not liking, they're the ones that we end up noticing the most. But then if you understand that and you feel clear from that, or not really clear, but something changes towards it. Your whole world becomes lighter. But when your world becomes lighter, then you take pride in being light, or you take pride in understanding what other people don't understand, or you feel better than others, or without thinking about it. All these things go together. I don't have to do any more. Okay? So they're all a package, but it's there's people say that the worst kind of student is a student who's understood, who's gotten the first part, because then they take themselves seriously too much. So the second part is going beyond dealing with just your desires or desires or your all those emotions, but just with the self. Because what we have pride in is the self. So the focus of our practice changes as we go along, although we also have all these things always at the same time. Because all of these tools are there, as I mentioned only just one time, but all these tools are there. This kind of study is so that we won't be selfish. That's the first part of the selfishness, is not being selfish, but just caring about the self or believing in the self. That's the second part. And we have to give up that as well. Even if we got it, we have to throw it away. Because if we keep it, we hoard it. I kind of drifted there, but that's also true. But thank you, Mark. It was a good question. Rachel?
Following what you just said, which captures me. Thus, if you have fear and initially you can be aware of it, but you still think and it sustains the fear. And then you can continue and you can have fear, and then the awareness has, I don't know, intensified or shifted so that you can not be attached to the fear. You're aware of it, but you're no longer attached to the fear.
Mhm.
And perhaps be mighty proud of it. So then, and happy, and just want to live without fear. That's enough. Thank you. But is there then the next, I don't want to say stage, but you know, another direction where you're no longer even attached to not being attached. In other words, you're not happy, you're not consumed by fear anymore. You actually have ceased dwelling on that. Am I describing something that
No,
makes sense?
that's all correct. That's all correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's, it's not, I mean, we're Zen people, so we don't use the word state. It's a nasty word.
Yeah.
But the other forms of Buddhism don't worry about that. Whatever is true is true, whether it's a state or not a state, doesn't matter. So what you are very much describing, that part of practice. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so finally, that's also what's called, go, as I mentioned this maybe one day ago or something, is going beyond form and emptiness, far beyond form and emptiness. Because the self can be a hurtful concept, but even when it's not hurtful to us, that's the anger and the desire part. It still is there, and we're still tied down to thought. So therefore, the Zen teacher, you can't tell he's a Zen teacher, or she, Rachel. Anybody else? I think actually the assigned time on this schedule is only for a half hour, because then you have more lunchtime. So unless you have something really interesting to say, which I would appreciate very much, maybe we should end now. So we're going to go to service. Yes, Mike. Mike.
One of the things I learned as a rock climber is fear can be a very good tool as long as you don't let it overpower you. It keeps your senses sharp. It keeps you aware of your surroundings. But as soon as you don't need it anymore, you throw it away, because then it gets in the way. So I don't know if that coincides what Rachel was talking about fear, but it's one of those things I found that it's like we've discussed before. Thoughts can be tools, and you use them for their need at that moment. But as soon as you don't need them anymore, you don't stay attached to them, because then they get in the way and they make things more uncomfortable. You just put it aside and you move on beyond that.
That's very true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, here we are, a bunch of post-adolescents thinking nonstop right now, when we should be sitting. But of course, should is wrong too here.